there, everybody. It's Anna here with Salt in My Coffee. Thank you so much for joining me again. I am excited to be sharing another 1800s recipe today, but I want to do something a tiny bit different because Election Day is on Tuesday, so soon. I wanted to share an old-fashioned recipe for election cake. If you've never heard of this, it's a fine old tradition to make a particular style of cake on Election Day. It was a thing in the 1800s. Many of these old cookbooks have recipes for election cake. And one of my favorites is in this particular volume. And I want to give you a good look at this. Look at that old stitching. This is not just an old book, but the stitching that is holding the bindings sort of barely together, even just that stitching itself is really old. This book has been through some things. And it's just a really cool one. This is Practical Housekeeping, a careful compilation of tried and approved recipes put out by the Buckeye Publishing Company in 1881. Buckeye Publishing Company is definitely an old publisher of many cookbooks, and this is another great one for the collection. If you ever see it, snap it up because it's just a fine old volume. 1881. I am turning to page 70. I'm going to do the same thing today that I have been doing, which is to share a link to a digitized scan of this volume so that you yourself can peruse it, enjoy all the recipes, and find some great ones for yourselves. If for some reason the link doesn't take you right to page 70, that's the page we're looking for, page 70. And I thought it would be kind of cool to start with a few tips on cake making because this whole section on cake making has some interesting exhortations at the beginning. So I thought I would just take a minute to read this little paragraph about it. Cake making. Let all things be done decently and in order. And the first thing to put in order when you are going to bake is yourself. Secure the hair in a net or other covering to prevent any from falling, and brush the shoulders and back to be sure none are lodged there that might blow off. Make the hands and fingernails clean, roll the sleeves up above the elbows, and put on a large, clean apron. Clean the kitchen table of utensils and everything not needed, and provide everything that will be needed until the cake is baked, not forgetting even the broom splints previously picked off the new broom and laid away carefully in a little box. A knitting needle may be kept for testing cake instead of splints. I thought those were some neat tips and never a bad idea. Put yourself in order, put your kitchen in order, and get ready to bake a cake. All right, let's turn over to page 70 and read that election cake recipe. Now, one thing you're going to want to know here is that a gill is a fine old unit of measurement that we do not commonly use anymore. Basically, it amounts to a quarter of a pint. So think about 4 ounces or about a half cup. So as you hear this recipe, think 4 ounces, quarter of a pint, about a half a cup. All right, this is called Old Hartford election cake. 5 pounds sifted flour, 2 of butter, 2 of sugar, 3 gills distillery yeast, or twice the quantity of homebrewed, 4 eggs, gill of wine, gill of brandy, 1 quart sweet milk, half an ounce of nutmeg, 2 pounds raisins, 1 of citron. Rub the butter and flour together very fine, and half the sugar, then the yeast, and half the milk. Hot in winter, blood warm in summer. Then add the eggs, then remainder of the milk and the wine. Beat well and let rise in a warm place all night. In the morning, beat a long time, adding brandy, sugar, spice, and fruit well floured, and allow to rise again very light. After which, put in cake pans and let rise 10 or 15 minutes. Have the oven about as hot as for bread. This cake will keep any length of time. For raised cakes, used potato yeast if fresh made. It is always a perfect success. This recipe is over 100 years old. from Mrs. Eliza Burnham, Milford Center. Okay, so keep in mind that at the writing of this book, 1881, that recipe was already over 100 years old. Don't you just love it? All right, happy election day, my friends. I'm going to put some show notes down there about measurements and oven temperature, and get thyselves ready to vote. Voting is as important now as it was then. All right, take care and happy election day.